Hey guys, this is Justin at this Robert Review, and this is a video I wasn't originally planning to do. I was actually planning to make these last two videos all related to the Halloween franchise. But then I saw this, and I was like, you know what? I want to talk about this. So when it comes to Christmas specials, the original How the Grinch Stole Christmas is my favorite. I adore it, it's just wonderful, and I love it so much. It's great, and I never knew that they did a sequel to that in the 70s, and it was a Halloween special. Of all things, called Halloween is Grinch Night, which just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my god, I gotta see this. And jeez, this is definitely something to talk about. This is an interesting thing. I thought it would be cool to talk about just at the end of the month, like a fun little obscure Halloween special. And also cool to talk about with, the new Grinch movie coming out. So Halloween is Grinch Night centers around the town of Whoville, which is really bizarre seeing it just without snow, like not in the winter time, seeing it just with the fall colors and everything, just looking like a normal town. That was strange. I'm not used to that. It's a regular day when all of a sudden these winds kick in, which they call the sour sweet winds, and all these dangerous creatures start popping up, which means it's Grinch Nights. The one night that the Grinch comes to town and just terrorizes the entire town. So everyone goes in and hides. They even have a Grinch alarm center where they call up and they have a guy who kind of watches out to see if they can find the Grinch. Almost like he's watching for a storm or something. Grinch takes, Max, of course, and they ride on down into town. And during this whole thing, there's one kid named Euchariah who needs to go to the bathroom in the outhouse, which they call the euphemism, which is silly, but okay. And as he's going outside, the winds blow him away, and he gets caught on Mount Crumpets and comes across the Grinch, who he has to try to stop from terrorizing his town. So there is a reason why this special isn't that widely known, and that's because, to be honest, it's really not that great. Watching it, you can clearly tell why it's not a classic like the original. Like, the songs are very bland and kind of forgettable. Like, the rhymes aren't that great.
Grandpa, we've stood and stooding just stooding produces no good.
The storyline isn't even that great. Like, there's not even, like, a classic, like, Dr. Seuss lesson to be learned at the end. It's all just kind of, like, by the numbers, typical stuff. And this actually was written by Dr. Seuss. Like, it's not based off a book or anything, of course, but it actually was written by Dr. Seuss, which is really interesting. I didn't think it was, actually, and at the end his name was in the credits. I'm like, oh yeah, so he did do this. So why am I talking about this then if it sounds like just a forgettable like TV special from the 70s? Because there is some good stuff to talk about, and definitely some weird stuff in this special. So, talking about like the animation in it, it's clearly like a step down from the original. Like the colors aren't as vibrant. It feels cheaper than the original cartoon, which is weird because that one is from like almost 10 years earlier. But this one feels a lot cheaper, a lot more scaled down. But some of that actually kind of adds to it, like the kind of muted colors kind of adds to the fall feel of it. And this actually has a really good fall feel to it, especially in the beginning when the winds start kicking in and all you see is just the fall like color, like leaves flying throughout the air. And if that doesn't feel like fall, I don't know what is. Like, I love those shots where you just see like the leaves blowing and then like the orange yellow leaves. It feels a lot like that season. So I like that. I actually really like the atmosphere of this. Like I said, it has a good kind of October Halloween vibe to it that really works. It is cool just to see the Grinch again. And the animation style is slightly different from the original, but it's cool to see him again. He's voiced by a different actor this time. It's not Boris Karloff, because he had unfortunately passed away by the time this was made. And the actor doesn't come close to Boris Karloff, because, you can't. It's friggin' Boris Karloff. But he does a pretty good job. I really like the look of the Grinch, though, because he has these, like, orange and red eyes. They're just so kind of weird looking, and just, like, they definitely stand out. Like, whenever he's on screen, I'm just looking at his eyes, like, that's just unsettling. It's kind of creepy, I really like that. And there was some weird shit in this special. There's some really strange stuff in here. Starting off with the most depressing thing about it, the character of Max. Now, we all know Max the dog from the original special, just that cute, cuddly dog, who is always just kind of being forced to do stuff by the Grinch, but he's always still happy no matter what, It's a cute, cuddly character. Well, in this one, first off, the look of him, the design of him is a lot more just like, he looks a lot older and more run down and more ragged. Like, he just looks tired and just old. And then it gets worse because he has a song. It's more of like an inner monologue song because it kind of like, you don't actually see him like sing it, but it's like going on in his head. And oh my god, you want to like never look at Max the dog the same way again? Just take a look at this.
How many times have I said in my head, what am I doing here? Why am I the slave of this grinchy old crock?
And it's just him just all depressed, being like, well, why am I doing this with the Grinch? Like, my family would be so disappointed in me.
Say how I wish I could turn back the clock and have the fine future I had once before.
And it's just like, oh my god. Like, now every time I see Max the dog, I just get depressed. Because I'm like, oh my god, he's just like being abused by the Grinch this whole time. Because in this one, the Grinch is kind of just a jerk, really. Like, you know, there's no like, oh, I don't like Christmas, so I'm gonna just ruin it. Like, there's no real motivation. He's just like, I want to terrorize the town, because that's what I do. That added with like the song from Max is just like, wow, it's so dark, and I was shocked when I saw that. I was like, oh my god. There's one scene where the Grinch is riding down the hill, and there's these flowers there that apparently are alive because the Grinch runs them over, and you see blood. Like, he legit kills them. And there's one left, one still standing, and Grinch notices it, so he backs up and makes sure to run over it, and then rides on. Oh my god! It's so dark! It's so dark and screwed up. Like, these flowers are living beings that bleed. And then you get to, like, the ending of this, when Euchariah is talking to the Grinch, and, you know, the Grinch is like, oh, I'll scare you away. He's like, oh, yeah, well, do your worst. And then we get to, like, basically a drug trip, because they're on top of what he calls the paraphernalia wagon, and the Grinch opens up this, like, one door, and this seemingly, like, gas comes out with, like, a face. And then we get to this weird, trippy sequence of just Euchariah running around, running away from these weird creatures that are like stopping after them. It's just a drug trip, basically, and it's such bizarre imagery, but I love it. Like, a lot of the imagery in that like scene like just screams Halloween, and just fantastic. Like, the animation in that scene is like really cool and really strong, and I really like that stuff. Like I said, it's a strange drug trip of a scene, which is him constantly running away from this weird stuff. Like, there's a creature that's just all legs, like running after him. It's just so weird, so bizarre, and I'm just like, okay, that's the climax of this video, huh? Interesting. And there's this weird continuing thing with the Grinch's eyebrows, where he's just like, oh, it's a wonderful night for eyebrows, and then his eyebrows pop up and kind of form almost like little wings, and you're just like, okay, that's weird. And then it happens again at the end. It's just a very strange thing, and just adds to the bizarre imagery that appears throughout this movie. Like I said, just weird stuff in this, like from the depressing Max song to the drug trip at the end. It's just such bizarre imagery in here that it doesn't, you know, doesn't capture the spirit of the original in the slightest, but it has its own kind of feel, own kind of tone to it that is definitely unique and definitely something different. Although, and one of the things that really doesn't work about this is the fact that it has no plot at all. Like, basically, you know, the Grinch is coming down to terrorize the town, and basically, like, Euchariah tries to stop him, and by the time you know it, the winds die down, and the night is over, and Grinch is just like, oh, I'm gonna go home, and he goes home. That's it. That's really how it goes. There is one moment at the end there where Max does decide to go live with Euchariah. He runs away from the Grinch. He kind of runs to Euchariah and his family and lives with him. So I guess there is, in a way, a Dr. Seuss message at the end of this one. Just get away from your abuser. I don't think that's what he was going for, but that's what it feels like. That's the life lesson in this. Because that's what Max does. He runs away from his abuser and goes live with a nicer family. I can't believe I'm talking about that. That's so friggin' weird. But that's one of the things that definitely holds us back. It's just the fact that, like, the plot doesn't go anywhere, and like, you really want to see like what Grinch Night is, and you think this whole special is going to be the Grinch just running around terrorizing the town, but it's not. It's just him on the way there, and it's like, okay, kind of bizarre. It doesn't really go anywhere, and that's kind of a bummer. And Max running away to live with that other family is something that's kind of interesting, because I know this isn't anything that needs to be legitimately discussed, because this is just like, you know, a kid's special that was put together that isn't really meant to be taken seriously. But it's like, how does this relate in timeline-wise to the original special? And it kind of is like a prequel, because, you know, Grinch is still angry and mean and not like, you know, the good guy is at the end of the original. So this could be looked at as like a prequel to the original cartoon. But then you have the ending where Max runs away, which, you know, completely contradicts the original. So there really is no real way to kind of line these two up. You know, I like to say that like it's a prequel, and like in between specials, the Grinch like, you know, took Max and brought him back or something like that. And it's not that important, but it's kind of an interesting note to be like, huh, like, because Grinch is still the angry Grinch that we know from the beginning of the original, so how is this like a sequel? And it kind of isn't. But yeah, like overall, this is an interesting special that I do recommend. You know, I don't think it's the greatest thing in the world. Like I said, there's reasons why it's not like a classic like the original, mostly due to like the weak songs and like the weak story and the fact that there's really no like classic Dr. Seuss lesson at the end, so it kind of feels empty. Like in the end, the special just kind of feels a little empty. But it makes up for it with all the weird imagery, like great Halloween vibe. This has a really great Halloween feel to it. I really love the animation, even though it feels cheaper than like the original cartoon. It just has a good like Halloween vibe to it, with like the fall leaves constantly like blowing in the wind and just the creepy monsters that keep popping up. And it's definitely something that I'm gonna try to watch in future Halloweens. You know, I watched the original Grinch every Christmas, and I'm gonna try to watch this one. Probably not every Halloween, but if I get a chance to, I'll definitely watch it every few Halloweens. Because it's definitely something worth watching. It's definitely very interesting, and if you do watch it, it'll, you know, change your opinion on the Max character. It'll turn that character into a very, very tragic character, but it's a very fun, very strange special that is not very well known, but definitely worth checking out, and is very interesting. So yeah, that's Halloween is Grinch Nights. The second film, in what you may not know, is a trilogy in a way, because this was followed up in the early 80s with another special called The Grinch's The Cat in the Hat, I believe. I still haven't seen that one, but who knew that the original Grinch cartoon was actually the start of a trilogy? That's something you probably never thought existed. But yeah, this is a fun, interesting special that's definitely worth checking out. And yeah, that's about it for now. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.